Well, good evening. This is the book spot. This is the spot where people get their books written. And folks, I'm so excited tonight. We have Ebony Vaughan, who's going to be our guest tonight, and she's going to talk about her writing experience. And I want to invite you out there on Facebook, YouTube, check out this show tonight at 7:30. Give you some time. I see people coming on already. So this is going to be exciting um, to talk about her journey in writing and just all the different things that she is doing. And so what I want to do now is read a little bit of her bio. I'm going to read her bio to you. And Ebony Vaughan is an author, minister of the gospel, entrepreneur, licensed clinical therapist, and coach. She has spent the last 27 years pouring into the lives of God's people spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. Ebony has a kingdom mandate to propel God's people into their God-given assignment. She is the founder of Triple G Living God's Goals and Grind, a movement designed to help God's people through the execution of his word to overcome every obstacle, slay every giant, and walk in the God ordained authority and purpose. Help me to welcome Ebony Vaughan. How are you today?
Hi.
How you doing?
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so honored to be a part of your show this week.
Well, thank you for coming on. You've been out there doing some big things. And so I want to start out with what got you into writing? What got you started with your writing?
So I think that maybe a short answer to that is just obeying God in terms of being led, to write my first book. And then after that, just really seeking God in terms of what He'll have for me to do. And the reason why I say that that is the short version, because in 2020, I had no desire to write a book. Um, I was meeting with someone on January the 1st of 2020, and my sister, she sat down next to me, and she said, and this is her name is Adrienne Holloman, and she sat down next to me and she said, "So when are you gonna write that book?" And I said to her, that's not really my focus right now. Maybe one day in my life I'll do it, but for right now, it's not a focus for me. So I never really thought about it after that day. And then COVID hit, and I started writing, doing courses and writing some technical work. And I was walking one day on my during my exercise, and I heard the Lord say, "Get ready for fight." And so at the time, I did not really understand what that was. I thought that He was preparing me for a message, related to perseverance and endurance. That was my intent. That's what I thought it was. But as I began to, really prepare to teach on the word fight, and I actually did. But as I was preparing for that, I had no idea that that was a book. And so God began to use that experience walking to help me through and guide me through a journey of writing my first book. And then after that, it was just like, clockwork. After that, He began to speak with me, and I just felt the leading to do it. And I think, one of the things about that I would say to that is, once you say yes to God, it opens up so many other things in you. So that is my story of how I got to write. And I always say, like, it's not a real provocative story about writing, but that's just where it started. And of course, when that journey started, I reached out to you and asked you some questions about it, and then I just executed it. So that's like a short and end of such a long story.
Awesome, awesome. So where do you get the information for your books?
So I get the information from my books through studying the Word of God. I also do a lot of writing myself as it relates to inspirational or motivational things, a lot of wisdom. I do believe that God has blessed me with the gift of wisdom, with word of wisdom. And so, you know, I wish I could say that it's because of my schooling and my education and all that wonderful stuff. But a lot of content I get through my seeking the Lord, and also as a clinician, and I've been in the mental health field for the past 27 years, and so as a clinician, working with probably over 100 people right now, there's always things that come up, that need to be addressed. And a lot of those things I might, expound on and talk about on my podcast or in other aspects. And so I believe a combination of studying, being in the presence of the Lord, and really being open to his downloads in addition to the things that I do in my everyday life. I believe that's where the content came from. The book Fight has a lot to do with my first book called Fight. It has a lot to do with my journey through surrender, submission, and really gaining a relationship with the Lord. And so that's where that book came from. My second book, Gifts, it has a lot to do with my journey of understanding my identity as opposed to the works that I do. And so the book Gifts has everything to do with our mandate from God as it relates to servanthood, and also being a reflection and an essence, and demonstrating his nature on earth. And my book Prayer has everything to do with just my life as an intercessor and the wisdom and instruction and knowledge that I've gained through my experiences as well as the Lord. And so each book has so much to do with the journey that God has brought me through in my 27 years in ministry, 26 years in ministry.
Awesome. Awesome. So what has been the most surprising thing you've learned in creating your books? And I also want to invite people who are listening, chime in with your question, your comment, so that we can be engaging here. So yeah, what is the most surprising thing that you've learned?
That I can do it, that I can do it through God.
Awesome. Awesome.
Absolutely. Because sometimes, we limit ourselves and we don't believe that we can do things. Many of us hear from God, we hear an instruction, and instead of us proceeding forward, we find reasons as to why we should not proceed forward. And so part of my journey through these, through the writing of these books has everything to do with understanding what the word says when it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I believe that if there is one thing that I learned through that process, is that when I believe God concerning me and I believe in myself enough, there's nothing I can't accomplish.
Awesome. Awesome. Do you hear from your readers, and what kind of things do they say to you after having read your book? Books.
Um,
Books.
so a lot of them say thank you. A lot of them give me maybe depictions or experiences from their lives that relates to the book. I hear a lot of they gained a greater understanding of what surrender looks like. And I think that was kind of that's most rewarding for me, because my desire is that the books that I birth are books of discipleship, and also that help people gain and yearn for a deeper relationship with the Lord. And so, those are some of the things that I've heard, just about, just how it's brought clarity to their Christian walk, and
Awesome.
it's also brought understanding of some of the things that they struggle with.
So, how many books do you have, and do you have a favorite?
So I have 4 books.
Hmm.
And do I have a favorite? I don't know if I have a favorite. I think every one of these books, it really it deals with an aspect of my journey and my relationship with the Lord. I will say that the most challenging book has been my last book, um, which is Courage to Move, maximizing every moment, overcoming every objection, valuing my vision, and embodying my extraordinary. So, this book, I believe, is probably it was the most challenging. It took me the most amount of time to complete. Um, and it also kind of, and because it took the most time to complete, it kind of touched different areas, and it allowed me to reflect upon the areas of my life that still need growth and still need God in. So I would say that probably was the most challenging. I don't know if I have a favorite though. As an author, do you have a favorite?
Uh, yes, I do.
You do?
Yeah, I have some that are really dear to me.
Okay.
I love Valuable. You're Too Good to Be Addicted. That
That
always,
was a good one.
yeah,
Yeah, I like that too.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't think I love all of my books. I don't know if I have a favorite. I just know that there are particular experiences in each book that really resonates with me. Mhm.
Okay. So people watching this are saying, wait a minute, you are a wife, you are a mother, you are a businesswoman, you are a writer, you are a minister. I mean, how do you juggle all this and still have time to write?
Balance and boundaries, prayer, seeking God, and being able to manage my time wisely, um, and also recognizing that when I'm in that process, maybe everything won't get done the way it should. And as a woman, as a wife, as a mother, sometimes we are hard on ourselves about making sure we're good at this, we're good at that, we're good at that, and all of those things are good, and I believe that God is pleased in all of those things. But sometimes we need to give ourselves the grace and kindness to accomplish tasks, which means that there may be a season where I might can't do this
Mhm.
that way, or I might can't do that, but because I have a deadline or I have a goal. The other thing that's really important for me is boundaries. Having a full-time job and a full-time practice, and also being a writer and all of the other things that I do, there are some things that I set really strong boundaries in terms of what I am involved in and how much involvement I am in other people's lives. being a therapist and being so visible in people's lives, I have to learn how to set my boundaries in the lives of people so that I'm not carrying them. And, in my profession, you can get real stuck in carrying people and carrying tasks and assignments that God isn't pleased with or he didn't tell you to. And so a part of my prayer time, it's really about being very clear about what I'm involved in and what I'm not involved in, and being clear in what I should be taking on and what I shouldn't. One of the things that I vowed to myself several years ago is that I would not get involved with anything that wasn't attached to my assignment. And
Mm,
so I'm very specific on what my assignment is. I know what my assignment is. And so I don't do much outside of that. And
okay.
I don't carry my people, carry those that I'm involved with. So it frees me up, it frees me up to be able to do the things that I believe God is calling me to.
Awesome, awesome. Do you have any suggestions for someone who wants to write a book?
Mhm.
Because this show is about helping people to become a writer. And so what kind of suggestions would you give? Because a lot of people are watching tonight, and they're looking for some nuggets.
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is to start writing, right? Sometimes we are so intentional about, I got to do this right. I got to get this. I got to get that. And we fail with the practical things. And if you want to write a book, the first thing that you need to do is to start writing, right? And of course, this is after you figured out what you want to write and all of those things, but you want to start writing. And you don't, the other thing that's important is understanding that you're not going to start writing something perfect, but allow yourself the grace to grow. Give yourself the ability to grow through the process. The other thing is that, our lives, because we have so much going on, it is important for us to take the time when we can take the time. Okay. Not everybody has the ability to write every day at 5 o'clock or every day at 11 p.m. You may have some days where you can write for 2 hours, and then there may be other days when you can only write for 30 minutes. And so it's really thinking about taking the time that you have and not being unrealistic with your
Mm,
time. It's
mm,
also not a marathon. If you are so fixed on completing a book within 90 days or within 1 month, that may impair your execution because you're more focused on the deadline than you are the actual process. And I find that the process of writing is sometimes more rewarding than the actual book being written, if that makes sense. It's the
Great.
process, right? Because the process requires a level of patience. It requires a level of commitment and perseverance. And it also requires a level of you overcoming your objections, because sometimes you can write a paragraph and you're like, you know what, this doesn't sound right. Why am I even writing this? You know what I mean? Like,
Right, right, right.
why am I even doing this to
Mhm.
myself? Nobody's going to read it.
Uh-huh.
So going over, the process part is what builds that character in us. And it really builds that confidence and that trust. I gave my testimony of how when I was writing my book, pursuing the heart and mind of God in prayer. I always tell this funny story about how when I started writing a book, now in terms of content, this probably was the most difficult for me. And I'm gonna tell you, this was in terms of content, this was difficult for me. But one of the reasons why is because when I started writing this book, Joseph,
Yeah.
I looked in the back of me, and I love um inspirational books. I may have all of Miles Monroe books, and I have Cindy Trim books, I have
Yeah.
Joyce Meyer's books,
Yeah.
and I read all of them or part of it, right? And I picked up these books that I had on prayer. One of them was from Cindy Trim, and one of them was from Miles Monroe. And I gotta tell you, when I picked up those books, I didn't write for 2 days. Because I started thinking, what am I gonna write about after
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
book? Like,
Right.
I have a prayer book from Joyce Myers that I read years ago. And so it kind of it crippled me a little bit, because I was like, what am I gonna write about? They already have this book. But I resolved to the fact that, we have those books, but nobody has a book from Ebony. And
Yes. Yes.
so,
That's right.
and maybe everybody will read Joyce Meyer or Miles Monroe or Cindy Trim, but
Mhm.
maybe they'll also read from Ebony Vaughan.
That's
But
right.
that took a level of courage and a level of perseverance through, those fears that I had, to get past that. So
Good. That's good. Because no matter what book you're writing, if 1,000 people has written it, your book is still unique.
yes.
And people need to know that folks are out there in a certain genre of writing, but they're never going to write like you write. So, don't get caught up in the hype. So that's good. So how does your family think about your writing?
Well, my family love it, loves it. My husband, he always encourages me to write. He was one of those those encouraging voices that said, so what, write your book. Just because they said it, that don't mean you can't say it too. I know that's not correct vernacular, but that was his encouragement to me. And I think that my family enjoy it. My mom, she's read all my books. And so she gives me her thoughts behind it. My first book had some had some things regarding my family, and also my husband. So I got their permission to put some of that information in there. So I think that they're proud of the work, and I think that the content, at least from my mom's perspective, has been beneficial to her.
So what do you think makes a good story for a book?
Your story, and I would say your story, a person's story, and I would also say what God leads you to write. I am a firm believer that whatever assignment God gives us, it's clear. And sometimes there could be trendy and very kind of like provocative things to write about. But, sometimes God has you on assignment, and there's something that He would like, to produce through you or through us. And so I think it's important to, definitely diligently seek the Lord concerning your assignment to write. But I also think that you should be authentic in your story, because, everyone needs to hear that, or those that God is sending your way needs to hear them.
Okay. So what happens if you're not spiritual, you're not connected with God and things like that? What would you say to that audience?
Well, what I would say is figure out what you want to write about, why you want to write about it, and do you have the content? What is it that you're trying to convey? And I think that that's really important when we're writing a book, because we can have thoughts, but we have to be able to connect those thoughts to a purpose. And so, although a person may not be spiritual as it relates to being led by the Lord per se, I truly believe that we still have to be clear on our focus, right? Because there are, there are some times when we're writing and we can kind of be all over the place. And
Mm,
so, with different ideas, and all of those ideas might be good, but the question becomes like, what are you trying to say? And why is this book necessary? And who is your audience? And so I think that a lot of those questions needs to be answered, as you pursue the process of writing.
yes, that's good. What do you think are some of the barriers why people do not start writing or get a book completed?
Fear.
I was going to say that.
Yep.
Say that.
Fear. Also procrastination, lack of consistency, and commitment. And I also think that what we just talked about in terms of lack of clarity is also a reason why sometimes we neglect to complete, or we neglect to start. Because a lot of times we have thoughts in our head about what we want to do or what we want to write about, but organizing those thoughts in a way that we can convey it on paper, it doesn't always flow well. And so sometimes we have to be able to still away so that we can experience the clarity that we need to organize our thoughts. I'm finding more and more that for many of us, organization of thought is very challenging and difficult, because for those of us who are creative, for those of us that have a lot to do and a lot that we want to do,
Right.
part of the struggle is stilling your mind long enough to have clear and concise thoughts. And so taking that time during your process of writing this book would have to do with you organizing those thoughts so that you can produce something that people understand and something that's beneficial to those that read it.
That's good. That's some good stuff. So I want to just kind of let folks know how they can reach out to you. So that's your website there,
Yeah.
triplegliving.com. Is that sort of the main way people can reach out to you and find out about your books and all?
Yes, I have a, Triple G Living definitely talks about my ministry and my brand. And then I also have a store on there where I have my books and products.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And your writing, has it opened up some other doors for you? Because I found that a book actually opened up speaking engagements and lectures and all that. What has your writing done for you?
So, I have had, opportunities to speak and talk about the books. I think that for the most part, it has opened up again my writing. As I said before, for years I've done a lot of like technical writing when it comes to policies and procedures and things like that. So I've always written, but now it's opened up the door for me writing more in terms of content, courses, trainings and things like that. I've done them before, but once you start writing, it really kind of, it helps you to I guess have the insight or the confidence, to tap into things that may were already there. So for me, it's more internal than it is getting like a lot of speaking engagements and things like that, although they're there. But it's really kind of opened the door for my desire to write more, but in other areas.
Oh, good, good, good.
Mhm.
Are there more books in you?
Probably, I always say this gonna be the last one. This gonna be the last one. But God is so funny. I mean, just the way that he does what he does. And I trust God, and my desire is to be led by him. And so I'll say I'm done for now. I could, it's nothing for me to say that emphatically, because I always think that I'm saying things like that emphatically and then another one. So I I don't know, but for right now I'm pretty okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah. That's good that you're open to, when something is upon you, that you get led to write. Um, I always think of, you just can't be everywhere, and your book will be your voice in a lot of places that you can actually physically get to. So, what are some last words you would say to the audience that is thinking about writing? What kind of words would you give them?
So I would encourage them to move, right? Looking at that acronym from my last book, I would definitely encourage them to maximize their moments by taking advantage of the time that they do have and overcoming their objection of whether or not they could do it. Just start writing. And then I would say to them, connect with people like Joseph McCray, who is willing to coach you through this process. Sometimes we need that coach that's going to help motivate us, and that's going to give us the courage we need, to accomplish what it is that we say that we want to do. And so I would say get a coach. And then I would also say make a commitment to yourself first. When we don't commit to ourselves, we don't execute. And so that commitment is, I will do this, and this is how I will do that. And so I would definitely start there. And I would also say, please don't look to be perfect. Just be a completer. Just complete what it is that you are starting, and execute that which you desire, right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but I believe the more you, the more that a person honors their commitments to themselves, the more confident they become, and the more willing they'll become to do it again and again and again. But we have to start by committing to ourselves and to God.
Ah, I like that. I like that. Honoring your commitment to yourself. Wow. That's good. That's good. Because, people can make commitments to a lot of people, but you first and foremost need to make it to yourself. That's
Absolutely. And I write about that because one of the things that we often say is that we take on this stance, as I'm a man of my word, or
uh,
I'm a woman of my word. And
yeah,
some
yeah,
of us create our identity on that. And it sounds good. It's
right.
like if Joseph says he's going to do something, he's going to do it.
Mhm.
That's just who he is. But when you get in secret, is that who you are? When you get in
Yeah,
secret, and the only person you're saying that to is yourself, can you
right.
honestly say that about yourself?
Mhm. You didn't fake the funk with everybody else.
Yes, because
Yeah.
I am honoring your image of me. If
Mhm.
if I keep my word, I'm honoring your image of me. But
Okay.
what about me?
Yeah.
Am I honoring myself? So
Okay. That's good. That's good. Well, good. I told people that you're going to get some good nuggets out there. I see a lot of people viewing. Maybe they're just taking in the notes and all. They don't have any questions or
yeah.
comments. Yeah, but that's all good. It's all good because you definitely have poured out and shared some really powerful things that I think will help get people moving. It's 2023. This book has been in you for a long time. It's time to come forth. And Ebony Vaughan has did it 4 times. She don't even know if she might do it in the fifth time or not. She's open for it. And I think it takes a lot of sacrifice. Have you
Mhm.
found that to be true?
Yes. Yes, it does take a lot of sacrifice, because there were times when I didn't sleep like I usually do, and I need my sleep. So there were times when I had long nights, and there were times when I had early nights. There were times when I couldn't do other things that I really wanted to do, but I could not do them because I honored my commitment to complete this. And it wasn't that the things that I could not do weren't bad. It doesn't, they were great things, but I just couldn't do them because, I was on assignment. And so sacrifice is important when you are trying, to execute or to accomplish something. And so, yeah, it's a lot of sacrifice. And the other sacrifice, and we talk about not being able to do things that you want to do, but it's also what you don't feel like doing, because there were times where I didn't feel like writing, but I did it because I knew I needed to do it to complete it, so sometimes it required me to sacrifice what I felt like doing in order to get that accomplished. There are some mindless activities that I like to participate in, whether it's watching a movie that don't make any sense or whatever. And there are Friday nights when I couldn't do that because I know I had to write. I had to, get things accomplished. And here's the thing: when we start talking about character and learning to honor yourself, Joseph, I didn't have anybody that said, Ebony, you need to get this page written by tomorrow. I didn't have anybody. So when you are leaning on you to exercise or execute something that you said God said, it requires a level of sacrifice. And there's not going to be anybody, unless you have a coach who gives you assignments and deadlines like Joseph McCray. But if you are doing this thing on your own, you have to depend on you to execute. And well, even if you're working with Joseph McCray, you have to depend on you. But I just think that, that portion of it in terms of character development is so important as well.
Yeah, that's good. I got a person I'm working with now. Their book is in the hands of the editor. And this was a book that they had thought about for years, but we got to working together and they did the work. They did the work. And it's completed, it's in the hands of the editor. So what would you say about editing, the editing process? Like, how important is that?
So I would first say to make sure that you find an editor that is, uh, skillful in editing, which also means that they don't change your voice while they're editing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's important because,
Very important.
I was very initially, I was afraid that all that editing that was taking place, that it would change the essence of my message. And because I was so sold on my message, I wanted to make sure that that wasn't tampered with. And I believe that for those who do write, that is something that you are concerned with, because you want to make sure that what you write, it's heard in your voice. It's heard, from the place that you actually wrote it. And so I would say that, making sure that you find an editor that is skillful in that way, but also trusting the editor, because sometimes, here's the thing, we can get a little kind of ego-ish when it comes to like our writing, and we're like, well, it sounds good to me, but you have to be willing to trust that that editors, their knowledge, right, and their expertise is better than yours. So that you don't get offended because they've asked you to change a paragraph or delete one.
Or move something over, right?
or
right.
or them telling you what you wrote here doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So so connect the dots. And I think that I've heard that, a few times. I'm not going to say a lot, but a few times. Ebony, connect the dots, because you went here. So just not being offended, but being open, and willing to hear the feedback, to that person that you pay and
Yeah.
that you trust. And what I would say too is, if there's anything that you're going to cut costs on as it relates to writing your book, let it not be editing. Let it not be that.
Awesome. Awesome. Absolutely. That is so important. And I'm so glad you said it. Don't cut cost on editing. Don't
Absolutely not.
don't do it. Don't do it.
and
Yes.
and and also read it over and over and over again, because sometimes you miss things, and you want to make sure that you are, you know you're covering your bases. So that editing piece is probably the most time consuming, other than the actual writing itself.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I want to give people your website again so that they can reach out and see what you're doing. You're doing some really big stuff. I follow you on Facebook and I see you on Sunday, so I know that God is truly at work, and I'm just really proud of the work you're doing,
Thank you.
and just keep at it. And I just hope that someone tonight has heard something that has inspired them and encouraged them to get your book written. I mean, there's not going to be a greater feeling than to know that you have accomplished writing your book. And I'm going to ask you this last question. Um, what happened when you first put your hands on your first book? Like, what kind of feeling was that?
It was kind of like a surreal moment. It was kind of like, wow, um, I did this. It was such a humbling experience for me. You know, it was humbling because of the story I told you, and I think that it's one of those things where it's like, wow, this is something that I did, and I think, there are other accomplishments and things that we experience in life, but for me, this was more humbling than anything. It was very humbling. Even my last book was humbling, because each time I write a book, it opens up a new part of me, or every time I obey God, and it goes back to everything goes back to my relationship with the Lord. And, with each accomplishment, some may say, or each execution, when it comes to an assignment, it humbles me, and I feel honored, and I feel, like, wow, God, you did this through me, so it's something that even to this day I'm still experiencing. So that first book is just like the last one, as it relates to, who God is, and what he
Mm.
truly wants to do through his people, if only we obey.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah, so awesome to hear that. So glad you just shared your heart, and I try to get that from a lot of writers. Like, what happens when you have that first book? That I know what it did for me, and I know what it continues to do, and I
What
just
did it do for you?
it showed me that I have a spirit like my mom, and the book was called Pushing On.
Yeah,
It showed me how to push on because
yeah,
there's a lot of uh, flack to actually do it. I almost didn't do it, and once it was done, it just launched a whole new Joseph. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it just took me into, man, what have I been, you know, holding out all this time for? You know, so
Yeah.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. So
Mhm.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Ebony, for
Thank
coming on
you for having me.
and and just continue to do great work. And I'm sure I'll hear about some more accomplishments you're making. And
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Bye bye.